Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Espen Kraft. Thanks for watching. And today we're going to talk about my vocal chain. I get a lot of questions about how I record my vocals and how I use my effects and insert, sense, etc. to make my kind of, I like to call it signature 80s sound. I grew up in the 80s. I learned how to record and mix and do all sorts of stuff in the actual 80s. So I'm gonna always try to make my vocals as 80s authentic as possible. Even if I use modern gear like plugins or new types of hardware, I will always strive to use it in a way that is authentic to the sound I love to make, and that is the 80s type of sound. Let me start by asking you this. What's the most important part of recording a vocal, 80s or not? You can answer in the comment section if you want to, but I'm going to delve straight in and say, well, the vocal itself. You have to have a sort of story to tell. You have to deliver that story convincingly. And you can capture the vocals with the best gear in the world. If you don't have a story to tell, if you can't deliver the story with emotion, the listener won't connect with your words. So to me, it's always important to have the story ready when I step up in front of the microphone. That said, a microphone is necessary to record the vocals. And right now I'm recording this voiceover vocal with a Austrian Audio OC18 condenser microphone. And I think this is a very good value for money. This will capture your vocals in a clear and nice way. It's easy to mix afterwards. But you also have microphones like this. This is a Neumann U89. This is actually from the 80s. You can see the purple badge here. This is a AKG D5 handheld dynamic microphone, and together with the Shure SM58, this is probably also one of the most used vocal microphones in a project studio. And back in the 80s, the Shure, especially because this didn't exist in the 80s, but the equivalent is the Shure SM58. And that was used on a lot of hit singles and hit records in the actual 80s. So you use whatever you have, you use what you're comfortable with. If that is holding a dynamic microphone handheld, singing into it, or a more expensive condenser microphone, studio microphone, well, it's all down to the story, your vocal deliverance. If that is there, I don't think the listener will really care whether or not you use a cheap or expensive microphone. So that was the microphones, but I have something in front of the microphone as well, and that is a pop filter. And when I say the word pop, you're supposed to hear exactly what it's doing. It's supposed to kill that p in pop, and used correctly, it will do that. If you have it too close to the microphone, I probably have it a little bit too close now to kill off all the explosive wording, but you have to regulate this depending on what your volume is, talking or singing into the microphone, the distance, what type of microphone you're using. So anyway, a pop filter can really be necessary, not always, but sometimes, to make the vocal deliverance better recorded. It's also there to prevent the singers from spitting into or on your microphone. So it can be a good guard in that sense as well, to prevent, well, some saliva reaching your precious microphones. So a pop filter, I definitely recommend you getting that as well. So what else does a vocalist need to deliver a good vocal performance? Well, we need some sort of monitoring system, and most of us use headphones when we record vocals. Personally, I use a pair of Beyerdynamics DT770. I've used them for years. I know there are more expensive models, and everyone has their own preference in terms of headphones, so there's nothing right or wrong here. Use the headphones you're comfortable with. I like to use headphones that doesn't bleed much into the microphone, so a closed system like this is preferable. Now we're going to record the vocals, and for that we need some more hardware, of course. And now it also becomes a personal preference, but since this is my video and I've been asked to name my vocal chain or describe my vocal chain, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go through that with you right now. So I record my vocals through the microphone, and that is piped into this preamp on this SSL SiX mixer. I use one of the SSL super analog preamps for my vocals. It's very clean, and that's what I like, at least at this point in time. So I run that microphone into that preamp, and in a insert chain I patch in the vocal leveler 500 from Tegeler Audio. This is an optical compressor. I'll get back to that later when I show you how I mix down the vocals. But for this time, at this point in the recording chain, I just use this to keep my vocals a little bit in check, so I don't go over clip anything. I just want to level it smoothly as I record it. And out of this little chain, I now run the signal into my ID22, which acts as a converter now, and straight into the DAW, and the signal is recorded. So this is basically how I record my vocals. Into the microphone, into the preamp, I level it slightly, and then straight into the DAW, and then it's ready to be mixed with certain effects and inserts. And now we'll take a look at that. And on mixdown, I have 8 buses coming back from the DAW into the SSL SiX through the jack there, into the line inputs of the SSL SiX. So I've set up stem mixes coming back from the DAW, drums, bass, synths, etc. But I have the vocals on channel 1, so I can use the insert points. And I have the bass on channel 2. And I have drums on channel 3 and 4, synths on 5 and 6. And I have the stereo returns from effects coming in at 7, 8, 9, and 10. And since I used that insert point on the SSL SiX for both recording and mixing with that SSL EQ and leveler 500 compressor, I've set it up on the patch bay in a half-normaled way. That means the EQ and compressor are hooked up in series at the back of this patch bay, so the connection is unbroken within the SSL mixer's insert point, insert and return point. But since the patch bay is set up to half-normaled way at this patch bay point, it means that I can take a patch bay and plug it into the top row, and I can split the signal and take this signal elsewhere. So I use this patch bay in this way for both recording and mixing purposes. That's the beauty of a half-normaled patch bay point. So that patch cord is going from the SSL SiX's direct output to the ID22 input. And this is a glorious arrangement. It means I can do both recording and mixing without having to patch up anything. I just leave it as it is right now, as it's a perfect setup. Maybe I'll do a video about patch baying and normaling, half-normaling, etc. in the future. And to complete the setup for this video, on channel 1 and the stereo Q-Send 1, I've set up an external reverb processor for the vocals. The master insert point and the stereo compressor and EQ is not in use on this video at all. So I've recorded my vocals. I'm now running that vocal back from the DAW into that SSL and into this insert point where it meets the SSL EQ and the vocal leveler 500 from Tegeler Audio. There's something very musical about opto compressors, and with that Tegeler leveler 500 I feel that the saturation from the transformer at the input and the FAT output stage really gives my vocals a shine and a lift in a unobtrusive way. So this is a track I have got going. I have some bass, some drums and some synths. And at this point with these stems I'm just trying to find an overall good sound for the music and start building, sculpting my vocal sound over that as a starting point. So for the first pass, I only have a de-esser on the vocals, nothing else. And I just listen to the overall vocal. And I can hear there's some unevenness between the loudest parts and the more soft parts of the vocal.
I miss you every day. I've been waiting for your call, waiting for my phone.
Okay, so let's engage the compressor.
Oh, I miss you every day. I've been waiting for your call, waiting for my phone.
Much more consistent vocal now.
For my phone.
more even.
Waiting for my fall.
So a little bit more compression
Waiting for my
from the vocal leveler.
And I miss you.
Works very nice.
More than you know. Every hour of the day. Nothing can keep me away.
I have it on a fast setting now at the mixing stage for the response time. So that's a little bit of compression. Now I'm going to turn on the EQ. Let's say the start again without EQ.
I miss you every day.
And with the SSL EQ.
Oh, I miss you every day.
Adding some sheen.
Waiting for your call. Waiting for my fall.
I'm not afraid to crank up the EQ if I have to. No one's gonna die.
More than you know. Every hour of the day. Nothing can keep me away. And I know that you're right. I've been waiting for the right time.
So that's a very good starting point. If I need more compression later, I'll add that with plugins, but this is a fine starting point. And if you check out the timeline here in the DAW, you can see my vocal track, and I have some edits going already. What I will do is I will find my best breathing sounds where I inhale breath before punch-ins, etc. And I will find the best ones, and I will edit those into other places in the vocal track where I need a sort of natural sounding breathing sounds, inhaling sounds before a punch-in. So that I will do for all the vocal tracks. And on this vocal track I will also add some micro pitch shift from a Eventide H3000 plugin. And from there I will bounce this track out and import it again into the DAW and work more on it if needed with more plugins like more compression, more de-essing, etc., if that's what the song requires. Well, this is how I record my vocals. This is my vocal setup, my vocal chain, and the plugin software and hardware I use. And the techniques I use here are pretty much the same techniques I've used over the years when I've recorded lots of other artists and bands and musicians, etc. in different studios I've owned and managed. As always, I'm Espen Kraft and I am the 80s. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.